name is Alejandro Rivera Rojas. I work at the UNIDO Directorate of TTA, and I would like to all of you welcome to this session titled The Potential of Blockchain for Increasing Transparency and Traceability Across Agro-food Value Chains. I will share my screen now with all of you for proper introduction. Yeah, as I mentioned, this is the second session we will be having today. And I would like at this stage to introduce our distinguished panelists for this session. We will be having Mr. Christoph Paruch. He's a researcher at the Research Institute of Cryptoeconomics from Vienna University of Economic and Business. And he has a focus on the development of token engineering, research teams, the creation of network design and incentive structures related to blockchain, and on other digital ledger technologies, and valuation of model of crypto assets. Yeah? His specialization is he's an agent-based economic modeling, game theory, and optimization methods, as well as monetary and environmental policy economics. We will be also having Ms. Irene Beers. She is the head of the Knowledge and Supply Chain Information Management Consultancy, and presently she is a senior consultant at this company, a service provider specialized in supply chain data management for retailers and producers. And Irene and her team perform deep dive assessments into the global value chain supplied to clients for assessing the possibilities of implementing technology in order to create transparency and monitor risks. Yeah, we also have a colleague from our UNIDO organization. We welcome also Juan Pablo Davila. He's an Industrial Development Officer at the Quality Infrastructure and Smart Production Division within UNIDO. He is also the project manager of the Ghana Improving Quality Value Chain project that has some relation to the session today. Juan Pablo is also responsible for implementing several technical assistance projects in several regions from Africa, Latin America, Asia. And it's worth to mention that he has started his professional career in the private sector as manufacturing engineer in the automotive industry. Yeah, so some of you may not know that. Okay, so with this, I would like also to present the agenda for today. The session has been structured as follows. We will be having a round of initial presentations from the panelists, and later on we will continue with a round of questions addressed to each of the panelists. I would like to remind, as in the previous session, for all the attendees, that if you have any question that you would like to check here, you can put it in the chat session, in the chat, and we can we will try to gather all these questions from there and try to address it to the panelists by the end of the session. Also, for your information, the session is being recorded, yeah, and will be available in the DTA Knowledge Hub later on for those that cannot attend this one or can partially attend. We will also share the panelists' presentations for your kind information. And yeah, so without further delay, I would like then to give the floor to Christoph. Yeah, Christoph, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. I will use the next 10 minutes or so to present general topics in blockchain. How does it work? What the functionalities are? How can they be used for agriculture applications? I'm a researcher at the Vienna Institute of Crypto Economics, based at the University of Economics. By formal training, I'm a mathematician, so please forgive me if my slides are a little bit technical sometimes, but I will try to accommodate the needs of the audience by being very, very abstract and very general in my explanations. So first of all, I would like to give you an overview of the basic concepts that are required to understand the blockchain technology, or what are we talking about here? So if you think about the last 12 years, from 2008 to 2020, you see that there was a revolution in the way how we communicate over the internet. So the picture on the left-hand side is what was before. So this was the Web 2.0. where you had basically the internet, a network of agents communicating over the internet, but all of them had their own version of data. So they all were storing their data in their own databases. So every node that was connecting and communicating over the internet was saving his own data. And the communication was only by sending copies of particular files. Now, after the invention of the blockchain by Namamoto in 2008 with the Bitcoin paper, we are transitioning towards a stateful web, the Web 3.0. So we still do have a network of agents communicating, but they all rely on one version of data. So instead of all of them saving their own data into their own databases, they are having a common knowledge of information, which is the blockchain. So here the information are stored in consecutive blocks of the blockchain, and everyone and every action and every interaction within this network is based upon information that you can derive from this. So this is the big change of the blockchain. Instead of having everyone having his own version of the truth, we have one truth that is applied for everyone. Now a very interesting concept is the concept of consensus. How do you reach consensus? If you have different agents communicating over the internet, and then you want to have to make sure that the versions of the data here do not split. So this what you see here would be called a blockchain fork. So you would have different versions of the blockchain, but there is this consensus mechanism that ensures that the true reality is always kept on the longest chain. So whenever you would have someone deviating from this database and someone trying to propose a different version of the database, then the general majority would say, no, this is not the case, because we stick to the longest chain and we continue working in this direction. And the most prominent blockchain consensus mechanisms there are proof of work, this you have heard about probably, and proof of stake. So what can you do with these blockchains now? You can build smart contracts. So smart contracts are contracts of code that rely upon information that is distributed in this blockchain. So you can see here that there are parts of data stored in this block, parts of data stored in this block, and so on and so on. But if you have here a contract built, then this contract would draw some information from different blocks and then execute this piece of software, this contract, only if some specific requirements are met. And this, in case, allows us to build decentralized applications. So on the left-hand side, you see what was happening before. So you have centralized applications where you have one database, one contract, and one computer or one node executing this software code based on data in one database. And now you have decentralized applications. So you have a network of computers partially executing pieces of software code that are distributed among different computers, which all rely on the same version of data that is distributed in the network. So this is what the decentralized applications are. So what does blockchain offer to us? We can use it for provenance, we can use it for the cost transparency, and we can eliminate economic inefficiencies, especially if we talk about supply chains in agriculture. I will tell you soon why. So please let me very briefly share the potential of blockchain, not only as a decentralized ledger, not only as a decentralized database, but also as a complex system. So you could say that now that you have this state space where you save information decentralized among all participants, you can build complex systems on top of them that are variable over time. So you have dynamic complex systems, and you have to make sure that that all layers of the economy that you create are considered. So you can build mechanisms where agents interact on the micro level, but then you will have emergent properties on the macro level that will result from actions of agents and individuals. So this is what allows us to build economics on steroids. So you can build control systems, you can build purpose-driven systems where you include a lot of information and a lot of data that you can observe or you can measure, because now you basically see everything or have everything that you need for your calculations. But not only this, you also can compute very efficiently. So you have today modern computers that allow you to take this data as inputs and make very good calculations and very good measurements for the future. So this is why crypto economics is the future of economics, where you have very efficient, high economic systems that are distributed over a decentralized database and are executed in a digital way. So this allows us, on the other hand, to build not traditional top-down organizations where you would have centralized entities, where you have a CEO, top-level management, and so on. But this allows us to build decentralized autonomous organizations. Okay, let's go back to applications of the blockchain for the supply chain. So if you look at supply chains today, you have a lot of inefficiencies and a lack of transparency. So you see that there is pollution, fraud, or human rights abuses happening because every agent in the supply chain has his own version of what's happening, and you have data leakage and data loss between the connecting nodes. So when the product reaches the supermarket, you don't really know everything that happened or don't have the perfect oversight of the events that were happening before. So how could you solve this over the blockchain? You could make digital twins of goods. So here you see the physical flow of goods from the farmer, producer, distributor to the retailer, and even to the consumer. And then you would base this on top of a blockchain network where you would, every interaction or every event that is happening place would be through an oracle transported to the blockchain, secured there, and then it would be intangible for the future. So everyone here, the distributor, the producer, would really be sure that the information that was stored by the farmer at a certain point in time is accurate. So making digital twins of physical goods is one potential of blockchain, how it can be used in the supply chain. So here you see what the current research efforts are in this area. So you see that from the provider, producer, through processing, distribution to retailer and consumer, you have different things that are very important and that are very critical for supply chain products. So you see that the provenance of a product is very important, the way of how it's being processed, so whether there are specific certificates or whether the temperature is being kept in order, to the retailer where you can even compare the prices, and for the consumer to really be sure that the product that is being delivered to the supermarket is really the one that is promised. So the research stages here that we are talking about is conceptual stages, implementation stages, small pilot studies, large-scale pilot studies, and integration to normal operations. So you will probably expect that some of the projects are at a very early stage, but there is already a lot of effort being done, and there are already viable use cases that are executed in practice already. So one prominent use case here is tuna on the blockchain. So here you see how the tuna production from production to the consumer is being mapped over a blockchain, and this process is, as I said before, represented with the flow of physical goods mirrored over a digital twin on the blockchain. So this is it. I hope that you had a good introduction on how the blockchain works, what the potential of blockchains are, and how blockchain is used in agriculture. I hope that in the panel discussion, I can address your questions then. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christophe. We will pass the floor now to Irene. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro. I will share my screen now. So I work for Sim Supply Chain, actually supply chain information management. And we are specialists since 11 years in data management, data on supply chains for our clients who are retailers and manufacturers. And the core of what we do is to create transparency by mapping supply chains. And by doing that, giving them a view on their risks in the supply chain and collecting data to see if the risks are mitigated. So I would like to show you something, some examples of our blockchain implementations, but first go a bit more into the concepts of traceability, transparency and visibility in the supply chain. So what have we seen the last 10 years? As regards our clients, retailers and brands, we see that more and more they want and need to know information about their full supply chain. So not only to the LSOP, which means the last stage of production, but to the first mile, where in most cases the issues are regarding human rights violations, environmental protection, etc. And also consumers are more and more aware of what can go wrong in supply chains, and they only want to buy a responsible product. So traders and producers who are supplying to these retailers and brands are of course feeling this pressure, but they also see an opportunity, and they take supply chain directors' roles in supply chain because they know if they can show transparency about their products and that they are produced responsibly, they can differentiate from their competitors. And for the primary production or first mile, this creates opportunities to create a win and having access to finance to produce in a more sustainable way, which is important since certification costs are often prohibitive, especially for small farmers. So what you see emerging the last few years is, for example, direct trade platforms on the upstream side of the market that link sellers and buyers and thereby increase transparency of availability of products, of prices, value, and also connect farmers to information on inputs, for example, seeds and fertilizers. So transparency is key throughout global supply chains and enabling more and more the trade and enriching it. So at SIM, we have been creating visibilities in the supply chain of our clients by providing transparency. You can regard this as a kind of backward push, asking the first tier supplier of our clients for information on the next link, etc., etc. So this is, kind of a rear view mirror, you could say. But as referred earlier, our clients have started to feel the pressure that for certain products and ingredients, they needed more timely information about the product that they offer to the customers. For example, for products where consumers and NGOs know there can be issues at least, for example, forced labor or deforestation or use of chemicals. So in order to create this timeliness and reliability, they needed instant traceability about where these actors produce the products and if it is produced in a qualitative and sustainable way. And that is what is added by having data travel with the products through the supply chain. So more like a push. So what we choose as SIM for this traceability type of data is blockchain technology. We call this solution power chain, and each of the solutions that we build with it has its own product story. I will come back on that later. depending on the specific product and related issues and the interests, of course, of the different participants in the blockchain, because now it is not only anymore about retailer or manufacturing asking for data, but in blockchain projects, everybody needs to have a certain stake and has to participate. They have to decide together what data they want to share to build their story, and also to build trust between themselves and at the side of the consumer. The data that is put on the blockchain is validated according to agreed protocols. Also part of the blockchain projects are unique identifiers for both the supply chain actors and for the product traveling through the blockchain, or the digital twin, as Christoph just referred to. So these are the facility, or we call it the facility passport, and the product passport. Even if participants prefer to keep part of their data anonymous, the validated passports will ensure reliability and authenticity of the information. And the passports will provide data points that transactions on the blockchain can be validated against, for example, for the smart contracts. I will now give some examples of our PowerChain implementations with different clients by means of impressions of the consumer communication, so really the consumer apps. What you see here is our first PowerChain. We built it together with Albert Heijn, the retailer in the Netherlands, Refresco, who is the bottler of their private label orange juice, and Louis Dreyfus and Company, the processor in Brazil. So SOMO, an NGO in the Netherlands, had repeatedly reported on bad working conditions on the orange farms in Brazil in general. And Albert Heijn wanted to make sure and show that this was not the case on their, well, not there, but the Rainforest Alliance certified farms that they used for the private label orange juice. So what the consumer in this case can do is when they buy this orange juice, they can scan this QR code on the package, and on the website that they are guided to, they can enter the product code, which is actually a batch code, where they find on the package of the orange juice. And then they can see from what farms the orange juice originates. So this was mainly about social compliance, to show the consumer that the farms were socially compliant, but also information about the quality of the juice was added to the blockchain. Another example is about banana. For Plus, another retailer in the Netherlands, they joined up with Vibes, their supplier, and with the farmers in Colombia. And also Climate Neutral Group was included. What they did was put all the fair trade banana from Plus, from Colombia on the blockchain, and collect data on each link in the chain about the carbon footprint. So what the consumer can see here is when they scan the QR code on the banana, and they enter the website and enter the code, again, the batch code, they can see what specific farmer has produced the banana, and also the footprint, the carbon footprint of the banana. What Plus did in this project together with Vibes is compensate for the carbon or the CO2 emissions. And now in the next phase of the project, the partners are working on improvements. So really on reducing their actual food, emissions, like Maersk, the transporter, but also the ripener. Next example is for eggs from the Netherlands with a focus on animal welfare. You can see here that the individual egg, which has an individual code, connects directly to the farmer. So all farmers in this project, I think it was over 100, have their own websites, and they can give information about their business projects that they are working on. So this also, of course, was partly a reaction to the crisis we had with fipronil in the Netherlands. Last example is tilapia, farmed fish from Indonesia, together with Jumbo and their partners. Well, many people think that all farmed fish is bad for your health because too much antibiotics is used and other chemicals, and also environment is damaged. So what Regal Springs wanted, the supplier, farmer of the fish, to offer the consumer information that they are actually not doing this. So they are feeding their tilapia with antibiotics-free feed. They have installed traceability from the egg to the actual product in the shops. And also information about how they treat their environment, which is the ecosystem of the Lake Toba in Indonesia. So to wrap things up, we learned a few lessons, not only from implementing blockchain, but also from managing those centralized databases of our clients and providing visibility in both ways. First of all, consumers are certainly interested. The apps are actually used well, but we can see more and more that consumers expect to get this information one click away. Second is that centralized databases are very resource intensive and expensive, of course, because of that, and not really democratic. Blockchain offers opportunities for joint use with different partners and joint governance of the data. This also links into the realization of, for example, retailers and manufacturers, that data ownership is not so much what this is all about. It is more about who has access to what information on the moment you need it and the risk you want to mitigate. In that perspective, when building a blockchain, the technology part is usually not the biggest hurdle. It is more about trust. So what data do I want to share and what will I get back? And about how you can make sure the data quality is guaranteed, because that is what you rely on in a blockchain. Another conclusion from working with many different actors in supply chains is that there is not one single best solution for managing the supply chain data. It will often be a combination of different systems, and interoperability, so interconnectivity, will therefore become increasingly important, and standards for that. And last but not least, in order to create trust between actors, they will have to retain the possibility to keep data private or anonymous. So this is what I wanted to tell you today from our experience. Thank you for your information.
Thank you very much, Irene. We will make some comments after all the presentations. We will give the floor now to Juan Pablo.
Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you for a very interesting presentations. Let me just share my screen. 1 minute. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see it.
Thank you. I will focus the presentation in what we've been working over the last months. It's on a blockchain readiness assessment tool. We have heard that blockchain is, and the fourth industrial revolution is a hype. It's a new world. Everyone wants to know, wants to implement. And what we were looking at UNIDO was, okay, let's look at the technology. Let's look at what are the benefits. And let's look at what are the challenges of implementing such a technology in our different projects. We aim with this tool to support countries to enter the fourth industrial revolution and embrace digitalization by advising industries and governments on the benefits, readiness, and feasibility of applying a blockchain solution throughout a value chain. So this is what we drives us to develop this tool. A brief history that our work in Ghana, because we have piloted this tool in Ghana. Over the last 14 days, we've been working in Ghana on different phases. The first phase was to set the basic conformity infrastructure. That is the basics. The second was to develop that infrastructure to be fit for purpose for certain value chains, namely the key exports of the country of Ghana, for example, cocoa. And the third phase, which we're working right now, is how to optimize this targeted quality infrastructure. And now you see we go from developing the basics, deploying, and then now it's optimizing. And I think new technologies are a tool to optimize current processes. And that leads me to the next slide, that blockchain is not the end, but it's a mean to optimize. So we need to be careful that we are implementing, or we're going to a new technology, not for the sake of having the new technology, but in order to optimize. Now, what to optimize? Optimize what? As it was mentioned in the previous presentations, we need to focus on optimize a specific or a group of specific targets, whether it is trust, trace, track, tamper, transparency, transfers, trade, etc. We need to be really focused on what is it that we want to optimize, and what is the best technology to optimize that. And by optimize, I mean maximizing or minimizing, maximizing profits, minimizing contamination, minimizing social impact, etc., or maximizing the social impact. The tool that we develop aims to answer 3 key questions. One is, does my industry need blockchain? The tool aims to answer this. Do we really need blockchain in my industry? The second is my industry ready to adopt blockchain? So maybe you have found some problems you want to optimize, but is it really ready to adopt blockchain? And the third question is, what does it take to implement blockchain? So this was the key elements that our tool aims to answer. And we try to answer this by 3 parts. First, the scoping, then scoring, and then reporting or providing a solution. Scoping includes the value chain analysis, stakeholder involvement, preparation of requirements, and this will allow us to answer whether the value chain needs a blockchain. The second part, which is the scoring, is to identify whether the value chain is ready for blockchain. So we score using questionnaires and scorecards. And these 2 parts, the scope and the score, the scoping and the scoring, are complemented by a fact-finding mission to the country to really touch and feel what are the actual needs and actual reality and circumstances that the different actors face. And then with this 2 parts completed, we can propose a solution. We need to be clear that the tool has a start and has an end. And of course, once we have a solution, a proposed solution, then a subsequent phase or subsequent area of intervention can have the potential for UNIDO to intervene, as it is the implementation of a pilot application. But this tool ends on answering these 3 questions and providing a solution of the ecosystem. What is the ecosystem? A suitable ecosystem to solve the problems that have been identified. We start with the stakeholder identification. This part has is very similar to other stakeholder identification that we have in many other tools. We don't only look at the actors in the value chain that add value to the product, as to see that touch the product or transport the product, but we also look at the other actors in the ecosystem of the value chain, which is can be the government, can be regulatory bodies, can be inspection services, can be laboratories, can be customs, can be groups, civil society groups, consumer organizations, etc. So we look at the stakeholder identification, and we try to identify which are the ones who have more influence and interest into applying or benefiting or to solve the problems identified of a blockchain. In the previous presentations, we saw that some of the issues in supply chain that blockchain can address. We also focus on this. We want to know what are the problems that the value chain has, and if these problems can be addressed by blockchain. Now, there's a very important part that we need to see whether other technologies can address the same problems. Of course, the experiences so far tells us that blockchain is an integrated tool that can solve many problems. So by looking at the value chain, we want to identify whether the value chain suffers from different problems. For example, the disconnected supply chain, the demand and supply, whether there is the data is not flowing upwards or downwards on the different needs of the value chain. There's no product traceability and product provenance. It is very important that blockchain technology offers to reduce the cost of verification and the cost verification of different transactions. And in every transaction, there are different attributes to that transaction. Those attributes can be whether the quantity, the quality, the way it was produced, the certificate that it has, the time that has been on the shelf, different attributes. And blockchain can record all these attributes in a safe way, in a difficult to tamper way. And so that provides the trust in the transactions from one seller to one buyer. Other areas of the issues is supplier contract management. For example, with the smart contracts that were mentioned, the system can be programmed as soon as the consignment has reached the laboratory and the test has been positive that there's no contaminants on microbiology or complies with a certain quality of the product, a payment can be triggered. And this we've seen in different value chains. Sometimes the payment between supplier and producer and clients take a lot of time. And this is a loss of money for the ones who have that money hanging there on one side of the transaction. Food fraud, false origins, similar link to the traceability and the attributes of a specific project. Centralized project, it was also mentioned in Christoph's presentation that the new view is not a centralized power, but a decentralized access of data and generating data. Efficiency with food waste and food recalls. This is the track and trace, the difference between tracing and tracking. It is also possible with blockchain. And also a key element on the sustainability and for the SDGs, the farmers are sometimes not included. And what blockchain can provide is that they can be included, they can be connected into the value chain. The methodology, by looking at the different actors, different problems, then we assess, the second step is to assess the readiness of each of the actors that we identify in the value chain on different categories. For example, if we look at any of the actors along the value chain, we assess what is the infrastructure that they have, whether they have access to electricity, access to internet, access to telephone lines, access to bank institution. And this is crucial if we want them to be connected to especially to the internet. If there's no power, it cannot be internet. So in developing countries, it's very important that we see whether the actors have the proper infrastructure. The second category is the data availability. What is the data that they do? Do they generate data? In what format do they generate data? As it was explained, blockchain system is to input data and retrieve data. So there are many data points along the value chain, many attributes on the value added that each of the links are generated, whether this data is available, how is it stored. Another important category to assess is the IT savviness. How well connected are these? How well use of technologies is within these actors, each of the actors of the link. This includes from basic access to mobile telephone, can be scanners, whether they have already scanners available and accessible to record. Also IT devices, and now Internet of Things devices, something that can be connected directly to internet. Of course, developing countries, depending on the value chain, this is sometimes a very difficult case to find interconnected devices. A traceability system as well. It is important to see that the blockchain system is it aims at replicating the physical assets, and it's a digital representation. So we have to first have a sound system of traceability in place. I mean, traceability systems can be a paper system of traceability, but the system, the foundations of the system would need to be in place in order to facilitate that migration from the physical world to the digital world into the blockchain. So it is a very important part for every actor, that whether they are part of a traceability system, whether they have a traceability system within the industry, and how, of course, this system connects. The traceability system generates data and is connected to the previous category. Another element is the transparency, how the transparency is running along the value chain, whether the farmers or different actors have access to prices, market prices, they know competition, market trends. This area is also something that it is required to see whether in the value chain it already exists. Transactions, we see that the traceability is following product from one point to the end. The transaction is the other way around. In the examples that we have conducted, we see a great focus from buyers in developed countries to see where the money is going, whether it's really reaching the farm, whether it's being held at intermediaries. So it is also an important thing to see how the transactions are held and what is whether this is cash transactions, it's electronic transfers, also how this is interconnected. The last category is the sustainability. See how important is the sustainability in the different, and what are the certificates that are required, what are the social requirements at the different points of the value chain. With this category, with these categories and along the value chain, different actors, we have the actors on the top and the categories on the left. We assess and we come up with a scorecard per actor to see how fit they are in this type of categories. We can identify those who have good level of implementation of those categories, a medium implementation, and then some bottlenecks and some things that need to be improved before we embark into a blockchain project. Some general findings is in the cocoa value chain. The example that we have concluded is, does the value chain need blockchain? Yes, we see that there are many problems that the blockchain can solve. There are some interventions, as I mentioned, that need to be seen whether other technologies can also solve, but interconnectivity between these elements is also essential. Is the value chain ready for blockchain? There's not sufficient IT maturity. Data is still paper-based, so there's a thing that we need to, because the migration between the paper-based and the digital world is very important. If we upload wrong information, then the whole system will be based on wrong information. Just to finalize, what does it take? Some recommendations we also had on this case, the digitization and extension of the traceability system, getting the first mile involved, the farmers and the purchasing clerks, and of course, depending on the characteristics of the value chain, there are some other recommendations. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to all panelists, yeah, for these very nice and very comprehensive presentations. We got from Christophe on the concepts and definitions for blockchain, the use of smart contracts, the centralized applications, etc., and also how this can be more. I mean, how we can materialize the application for value chains. Yeah. Also from Irene, we learned a little bit on the importance of the transparency and traceability of this of the application of this type of approaches. for value chain, and particularly on the relevance and the nature of data. Yeah, and several examples on different agro industry value chains. I got a lot of questions in the chat. I guess you are already answering some of them. We will try to address them in the next, in the round of questions. Also from Juan Pablo, yeah, I think it's providing a very good explanation to our colleagues in UNIDO how we can apply this type of technologies in our technical cooperation projects, particularly assessing all the different elements and the aspect that challenges, etc., that needs to be considered. Thank you very much again to all of you. I will start with the round of questions. Yeah, the first question is for Christoph. Christoph, can you explain us briefly, because you have now with a little bit time constraint, what are the implications of moving beyond centralized systems where one or reduced number of single authorities no control access? Yeah, how is data privacy ensured?
Yeah, thank you for this question. So moving from centralized to decentralized systems means that there is a change in design, but not only in design, but also a change in governance required. So since the systems that you build are decentralized now and they are very difficult to manage, you need to take this into consideration from the beginning of the project. So you really need to make sure that the proper design is ensured. Because if not, the system can run away, right? So if you design something that is autonomous and it's not properly designed, then it will do something that it's not intended to do. So you have to make sure that the governance, the maintenance, and everything that is connected to this is also very well thought of. But in a broader sense, moving from centralized to decentralized systems also means that you make a shift of responsibility and the risk transfer. So in traditional organizations where you would have people who are liable, people who are, whom you can confront because of specific actions or specific consequences. This is not possible in decentralized organizations anymore. So you need to make sure that this shift of responsibility and risk is appropriately represented, and that the consumers or the users of the systems are also informed about them, and they know that they have to take specific considerations into account when making decisions, because there's no one who can be held liable to something. Lastly, it is also very important that the oracles are accurate. So whenever you want to transport information to the blockchain, you need to make sure that the information transition to the blockchain is very secure and accurate as well, because the blockchain only can make sure that the data within the blockchain is intangible, but it cannot make sure that the information that you provide or write to the blockchain is accurate, right? So when you have these applications where farmers tell you something which is not true, it doesn't matter if it's in the blockchain or not, it will remain untrue altogether. But yeah, so these are the consequences from my side.
Okay, thank you very much. In this line also, Irene, can you mention what are the risks associated with the integration of blockchain into global value chains, how they can be managed?
Well, I can think of many risks, but one I would like to mention specifically is that, first of all, you need, like I already referred to in the presentation, you need the actors. They have to, be willing and be able to participate, to collaborate. And trust is, of course, an important point here. Blockchain can create trust, but you also need it, actually, before you start. And the biggest risk is related to that. So if there is not a win-win situation for all actors that are needed, then it will be very difficult. For example, in case of intermediaries who just, move the products forward in the chain without adding real value, but at the same time are taking a piece of the cake and the margin, then there is a potential risk, because those parties will not be the first ones who want to, to open up, to give transparency to some extent, so that people can see what they do and what their margin might be.
Okay, excellent. Juan Pablo, what are the biggest challenges for farmers from developing countries where most of our projects are currently being done, while using blockchain in their daily operations, how they can overcome these challenges?
Well, I think there are many challenges. One of the tool identified these challenges, whether it's access to energy, whether it's access to internet, whether it's IT savviness. All these challenges are now. What would be the first one? I think that is a key question and a difficult question to answer. From that assessment that we have, and based on the experience that we have at UNIDO, while I would say the challenge is the change of behavior of the different actors. I mean, because there's a need to change the behavior, and to take this change of behavior, not only you need the appropriate access to energy, appropriate technology, but also that willingness to change and to see what is in it for the farmer to as an immediate gain. Or convince the farmer that this is for the best general good of the farmer. That is what is one of the key areas: the change of behavior, and of course the absorption capacity. The absorption capacity. Many of the farmers are so involved into their day-to-day operations that they don't have time to go to a training on how to input data. So there are many challenges for a developing country that we need to be addressed, and these don't really differ from other challenges that we are used to struggle with in UNIDO.
Okay, thank you. Christoph, I go back to you again. Which strategies can be followed to address blockchain interoperability? Yeah, as this is one of the critical challenges as well, and particularly considering the context of a developing country.
Yeah, so regarding blockchain interoperability, you have to distinguish between two things. You have to consider, one, the interoperability between different blockchains, but also the interoperability between a blockchain and a device, right, an IoT device. So the question here is how to make sure that the systems that we build can communicate with each other. And there are several solutions already on the market or being developed that ensure that, for example, the Ethereum blockchain or the Bitcoin blockchain can communicate with each other. But this is, from my perspective, from what we observe here at the Research Institute, this is everything in a very early stage. So it will be crucial to find out within the next 5 years how the technology develops and how improvements to the technology will be made. So then we will have increased speed, increased transactions, increased data volume possible within these blockchains. And then we will see how these solutions really are applicable in practice. So the challenges here are from a technical perspective, I would say. So there are protocol teams that need to do this work, the same as we did with the internet 20 years ago. It wasn't like at the stage that it is today. So it took us 20 years to come to a level where we can communicate with over the internet worldwide. But especially with the developing countries, you will also see that the technology will affect them very rapidly. So once the solution is out, so once there is like something that is functioning in industrial country, you will have no border limits anymore. So you will have like you can transport the solution directly to any country in the world, because this is only a technology in that sense.
Okay, thank you. Irene, I have changed the questions a little bit. We got one very good from the audience. I would like you to maybe explain a little bit. You mentioned during your presentation on the benefits of the transparency and traceability as main benefits for application of this type of technologies in value chains. Yeah, but I mean, mostly from the perspective of the consumers or those which are involved in the value chain. How do you assess could be the benefits for the food producers, yeah, for the food processors? How they can see their benefit in applying this type of technology, and particularly what is the ultimate goal?
Yeah, well, of course, there are different producers in the supply chain. You can talk about farmers, about processors, about maybe manufacturers of the end products. So it depends, of course, on their specific situation. We have been working on especially this aspects with Juan Pablo also to see, okay, so not only what is the product story from a consumer point of view, but also what would be the benefit, what is the current problem for each of those actors, and what is the potential benefit of implementing a blockchain solution. And it can be very different. For example, for a manufacturer, it might be very important to have his risk of fraud, of mixing batches, etc., in the stage before him, this risk mitigated. And this, of course, can be helped by implementing blockchain, by gathering specific data points and validate these according to a protocol that you have a consensus about. That could be a potential benefit, but also in terms of finance. Juan Pablo also referred to that. It happens a lot in supply chains that suppliers have to pre-finance actually the whole production, and they get only paid after so many weeks or months even. And so in the area of supply chain finance, blockchain can also really improve things. And well, actually the problems that Juan Pablo mentioned are, if they occur at a specific step, link in the supply chain, they could potentially be solved by blockchain. Of course, there are many other parameters that have to be, or factors that have to be fulfilled. But it's not only about the product story for the consumer. That's right.
Great. Juan Pablo, can you explain or mention what are the most critical factors that decision makers should consider before implementing blockchain? You will mention some of them in your presentation, and what is most commonly overlooked from your opinion?
One critical is, where do we want to go with the technology? As it is a means to achieve something, to optimize. So it has to be, that idea has to be clear as the whole work behind where do we want to go? What is it that we want to optimize? Do we want to optimize environment? We want to optimize that farmers are paid, the payment delays are shortened, or we want to optimize that. That's one key factor of the decision, and not going into the hype of, yes, this is a new technology we should implement just for the sake of implementing and having said, well, we have implemented blockchain. But this is exactly what is it that you want to optimize, and what are the key performance indicators that you want to measure whether you have optimized or not. Whether this is time, whether this is traceability time, I mean, how much it takes to trace back a product from the Netherlands, let's say, because these are key indicators. Maybe that is a key indicator for the supermarkets, but not for the farmer. So that exchange, that mix of indicators needs to be clear for the decision makers. And if the investment, the reward is more than the investment, then it is a wise decision to invest, and not only monetary but also in time. And as I mentioned, the difficulties to change behavior are very. Another key element I think that sometimes is overlooked is the last mile. I mean, what is sometimes called as the last mile, which is that transition, what Christophe also mentioned, that transition from the physical world to the digital world. This has to be ensured, and if it's not ensured, the whole system doesn't work. So the oracles that it's a way to say that, okay, this is how we can exactly be sure that the physical asset is now translating into a digital asset. For Bitcoin, this was not a problem because Bitcoin was a digital asset since the beginning. But if we want to implement the same technology into a value chain, we need to digitalize a physical asset, whether it's tuna, whether it's a bag of cocoa, into the digital platform. And what are the elements to and I see one of the questions also asked how can we improve that? Well, there is a certain level of trust, and a certain level of training, and of course there are other elements that you can put as Internet of Things. I mean, scanners, temperature controls, whether the right temperature is inputted into the blockchain. Well, you can have an electronic thermometer that is connected to the internet, and this is how you connect also Internet of Things to blockchain, or a camera, or a weight balance to say, yeah, this is connected. This was the batch number that this is exactly. So this is how you can ensure that the physical world is transferred into a digital world accurately. But of course, all these elements and all these devices have a cost, especially for developing countries.
I would like to finalize this panel, yeah, and I will ask you if you can just say in a few lines, I mean, one sentence, one key message you want to share with us, yeah, from your side on the application of this type of technologies for optimizing agro-industrial value chains or for improving traceability. Yeah, I will start with Christoph.
So I have two key messages. One would be that blockchain is a very good technology for improving the existing processes that we have, right? So you have the first stage of innovation. You can improve and accelerate existing processes. You can remove barriers. You can remove intransparencies by implementing blockchain. This would be the first thing. And the second thing is that you have the second step of innovation, where when you use this new technology of blockchain, there could be emerging other digital economies on top of that are even more sophisticated than we can imagine at the level today, right? So there is huge potential behind it. So the second level of innovation would be to build new digital economies on top of a shared infrastructure.
Great. Irene?
Yes, I would also like to finalize with a positive note on blockchain. It's not easy, but it is not only about technology, and that's, I think, a very important message to as a takeaway. However, the technology in itself enables different actors with very different systems, traceability systems, serialization of batch codes, etc., to join and to link to each other on a sort of highway, which the blockchain offers. And I also think that it is important to see that also parties who are not perfectly IT savvy yet, there are possibilities to connect to blockchain, for example, with mobile phones, etc. So there are, most important is you need the collaboration, the intention to, in the end, to work together and to improve things. And then, well, the rest, you will figure it out.
Okay, Juan Pablo?
Thank you, Alejandro. I think the key message is that it is very important to, while it is an incipient technology, we see many applications already. And I think one key element for developing countries is that they know what the technology is capable of doing. So there's a lot of building awareness from different sides to what the technology can do and what cannot do, because also there's many misconceptions of what they can do. Sometimes they say, oh, there is transparency. And as you know, sometimes transparency is not the key element that developing countries want, or developed countries as well, want to have, but it is that understand really the technology how it works and build awareness so we can get into this knowledge and start looking ahead in the future.
Excellent. I thank you all of you for these very valuable answers that you have been provided within this panel, and also your key messages. I would like just to add from our side, from the Directorate of DTA, that we also, I mean, we are promoting all these specific webinars on specific technologies, but we are very aware that all 4IR technologies are very related to each other, yeah? And you have demonstrated that we cannot talk about blockchain application without considering Internet of Things or cloud computing, for example. Some questions in the chat has been regarding the energy consumption, etc. So this brings us to other of the technologies that are also used, like big data or cloud computing, regarding these issues. But what we would like to also share the same message as explained by Juan Pablo. What is more important for us is not the application of the technology itself, but what we want to solve with these technologies. I hope all our colleagues attending this webinar has learned a little bit on the blockchain applications and definitions. And I really thank all the panelists for your very detailed presentations and all the knowledge you have shared to us. I would like to take the opportunity to remind that all this webinar series is being recorded, and we will be hosted in our knowledge hub for anyone that want to check it later, and also the presentations will be shared with all of you. Saying that, I would like to close the session, and I really thank again all the panelists and all the attendees for this webinar session. Thank you very much.